Continue to admit folks. Sounds like Lisa will call in for her portion, and that's fine as well. So good morning. We're going to start the recording today for Communities of Practice. It's July 2024. Welcome to the new fiscal year. It's pretty crazy. I can't believe it, and I'm sure you can't either. We're excited to have you guys here today. We may end up early. We're going to kind of see where our conversations take us today, but there's always something to discuss. So welcome everybody, and we're going to get started. So our agenda today is a little out of order, it seems like, because I've pushed down some of the what's on your radar and stuff to further on in the discussion. But we do want to start with congratulations, celebrations, and shout outs. We're in a new fiscal year. It's dual entry time in 2 fiscal years. So it's accounting mayhem, as I call it, for the month of July, just getting things sorted out, as all our business office folks and program managers know as they're trying to collect all that last minute stuff and take a look at what the new year is going to look like. But we're going to talk about some housekeeping items with our IDEA and our CFSGA applications, talk about some upcoming training opportunities for y'all. We'll also look at obligation reminders as we get close to closing out our fiscal year and when these grants are ending. We're going to talk about some of the other hot topics out there in the field. There's a lot of news and legislation, local and federally, going on. We'll talk about some of those things that are coming up on your radar for this new fiscal year, and how to best define who's in charge or what. And then we're going to do the professional development about these federal budget requirements, because it is kind of arduous as you guys put these budget narratives or the the FTE components and whatnot into the applications. So we're going to get into some of the federal requirements behind that, just to put the why in there, like why do we have to have this and to what extent, so that you guys understand that, and maybe it's just easier to focus on getting it done that way. And then we'll do a quick recap on those uniform grant guidance updates that we did in May, because we didn't do it in June. And so we don't want that to fall off your radar, because some of those pieces are integral to some of the things you might have to change for your policy. So we want to make sure that you guys have that in mind as you get ready to start setting some of those board agendas for the new year. All right, so celebrations and shout outs, put them in the chat. Anyone want to come off mute? Summer vacations? I would love for you guys to chime into the chat and say, what's your favorite part about summertime? But this little meme goes out to all those folks out there in the accounting offices. It is a cruel world out there right now. My old business office had t-shirts about this, man. We were so excited and yet not. And so it was nice to get ready to close things out. But I'm interested, what's everybody's favorite part about summer? Is it because you have a couple weeks in between, when folks go off contract and it's quiet, you can get things done? Is it because you love flip-flops? We're trying to humanize this group, right? It can be work related, but maybe you love lemonade or something stronger. But let's all try and harness that positive energy there and talk about things that are important to us. So keep that in mind, and keep putting those in the chat. I just like having the chance to see what y'all are doing and how everybody is feeling about summertime. One thing that I will say is that it is hot. I don't look forward to the smoke, and hopefully those fires will subside soon. But let's keep it moving here. This next slide also goes out to our folks in the accounting world. Yeah, I'm a little geeky here, but I can't help myself when I see a good one. What do you call a gang of accountants? A crew. I love it. My face often looks like the one in the far left corner where I can't find the work papers, and it's like, wait, this is impossible. Maybe the archives are incomplete. What happened? Someone didn't save this. So and so had this on their desktop and now they're gone. So that's stressful. So I'm sure you guys are all digging those out to get ready as you're getting ready to wrap your years, and or to at least put the accrual processes in place for those new pay runs, those check runs that you guys are doing. Year-end closing is another one that it takes our breath away. It's hard, right? You have this whole summer that you might be doing accruals, and then you'll have your drop dead date for the auditors. So if you're not in accounting, you may not appreciate this as much, but even program staff trying to focus on getting all those last mileage things submitted for the right year, or expense reimbursements, personal reimbursements. I know you guys are working really hard on this, and it is hard. It is so hard. You're balancing, doing so many balancing acts. Did we meet maintenance of effort and this and that and all the requirements? And I need to draw this down. Oh, whoops, my budget doesn't match. All those things are so important. So keep on keeping on. We've got your back. If you have questions, that's why we're here, so make sure to ask. Now, we're going to do a little bit of housekeeping just in general from our federal teams, because there's a lot of things going on that are important that we don't want you guys to lose sight of. But first thing on this agenda, we're going to launch a little survey for you guys, a little poll, because Communities of Practice has swapped between a Tuesday and a Thursday in past years. So we're just curious for the gang that's here today. You guys are working through the summer months and took the time to join. What days work best for you guys? So as this poll is out there, we have a couple questions. Do you have other preferences that are not in here in these questions in the poll for the week? The types of things you're looking for. And I just want to make sure the poll has launched. I think it has. Yes, it has. Okay. I have it on a different screen. We'll leave it up for a few minutes. So we have the time question, the day question. Sometimes certain people have meetings that always conflict, and maybe I just don't know that there's always a state meeting with, I know about the School of Finance, IASBO call, but maybe you have other meetings that are always in conflict. So please let me know what's important to you. What are the topics? We've kind of turned this into a lot of legislative updates, things that are maybe seasonal, but that help, even if it's just to put it on your radar, that something you might want to watch. But what about just best practices? Something that we're thinking about launching is another grant training kind of module-y thing that would be outside of Communities of Practice that would help folks that are new. So that's something we're looking at. I'm just looking at a lot of the stuff coming in. LEA perspective trainings sometimes are the most helpful when someone has cracked the code in their system and knows how to do something. Like maybe we have someone that's a rock star in Skyward that would say, I know how to do this one horrible thing that we have to report, and here's the way to do it, or visions or other systems. So if you think those things would be helpful, please answer those. And it looks like we're getting a lot of answers here about interested in grant training modules that you can do on your own time that really just gives you that extra oomph to help you understand certain practices so that you guys can stay in compliance. That's the whole goal. Well, let's end the poll and share the results. We've left it up for just a couple minutes, but let's go ahead and share that just to see what people are thinking. Interesting. So many of you guys did participate, so thank you guys for doing that. And it looks like a lot of folks wanted around 10, and that's great. I think that time works great. It seems to be easier to do it in the mornings than the afternoons, which I think you guys are looking at as well. It looks like equal again. Last time we did this between Tuesdays and Thursdays, but Wednesdays seem to be a busier day, and Mondays seem to be a lot of staff and team meetings, so we don't want to conflict with those. And 100% of those that answered want more training on these federal grant requirements. So that's great. That's why we do this. Looks like pretty good interest on legislative discussions, as long as we don't or updates, as long as we don't spend too much time on them. But these LEA trainings, it seems like maybe that isn't even the best use for you guys. So maybe we'll just keep those to the topics we know or that we have heard you guys want. But really those best practices, a lot of that comes from you guys. And then it looks like everybody wants that module. So yeah, let's stop sharing the poll and we'll keep on keeping on. So thank you guys for that. That's super meaningful for us to make sure that we're getting you guys what we want, because that's what this whole thing and premise is about. Now, We want to jump into some of the federal programming applications for funding. So as you guys know, you have the pleasure and the opportunity to share your budgets with us in June to make sure that you can have access to those funds. Now, I'm going to start with the IDEA application. That one was due on June 30th. And our team here is finalizing. There's a couple more of those that still need approvals. You may have had yours kicked back. Mostly we approved everybody's, but you may have had notes that came through on yours to add more budget details in the final application. It's technically open, by the way. However, it's not due until November because you guys are still just starting really your accrual season. And in the IDE application, in our final application, which starts July, that's where you're going to report your prior year expenditures. And it's for the second component of the compliance test. So you asked for the money in our preliminary application, and that's doing the MOE, the maintenance of effort eligibility, that yes, I've spent the same amount as I have before, I still have skin in the game, I'm not supplanting, I qualify for funds. Final application is that second piece of compliance that I did actually spend that the year before. So that's why we have a prelim and a final. I've got to have you ask for the money by June to save you that little set aside for you and not reallocate it. And then we give you all summer long till you're done wrapping up your audit. It should be your audited financial numbers that you're sharing in that final application. If you do submit it sooner than your audit and something changes, you can feel free to let us know. There's a button even inside the application that you can unsubmit, revise that final reporting to us, and then resubmit that to us. But we just want to make sure that you guys understand how that flow and that process is in place, why we have to do two. And I have on the last little line on this slide, there are some small adjustments I'm going to be making to some final allocations, and that should be coming here in the next couple weeks. The reason I haven't really launched the email to announce that final application is because I know I'm going to change it and you might get $5 and you got -1 and whatever. So I didn't want anyone to think that they were under pressure. You have till November. All right, now moving right along, let's talk about CFSGA. I'm going to turn it over to the federal programs team and they're going to talk about some of these items on their list.
Good morning, Katerina Dyer here with Federal Programs. Thank you, Lisa, for letting us chime in here into your lovely webinar. Just a quick update on CFSGA applications. We are in the midst of reviewing and approving or not approving applications. Our process had a little bit changed. So what we're doing this year, you will be, as initial review is completed by all the program members, you will receive email. It will be coming from me. It will be going out to superintendent or school administrator, business manager, and for federal programs director or person who manages federal grants. In that email, you will see comments from our program coordinators. It will be list every single program in that email which requires your attention. Also, if there is more in-depth conversation needs to happen in side of the programmatic, you will see the comment that please contact coordinator to address more complex layers of the issue that needs to be potentially discussed versus just sending a comment. Also in that email, you will see the due date for returning and resubmitting applications. We are given a 2 weeks window for you to resubmit. So we assure quick turnaround on application process approval. Couple things, as we're reviewing applications, we see some common errors, common things that going through our review. Some of it in the budgetary area where like FTE and the total budget amounts are not adding up. So please be mindful of that. That might be one of the reasons that we are returning applications. Also, once you ready to resubmit, please don't forget to actually submit the application, resubmit, hit the button to resubmit the application, not just leave us the comment. And there are a few more programmatic, most common issues I will let Kathy Gabi to address as we review in the process for applications. Thank you.
As Katerina mentioned, there's a few common things and all that happen on that, and some of it has to do, if you've heard lately from, say, a school district has heard from a private school partner that, oh, we didn't think they were going to take equitable services and now they are, that has caused a little glitchiness on our end. And so if you change your equitable services, keep in mind that that also affects your programs. And so the easiest thing to do offhand to begin with is to go ahead and save each tab again in your equitable services. Then that will talk to the program tabs and go through and save those corresponding program budgets as well. And then you may need to make some adjustments in your budget. And then again, be sure and save every tab within that as well. If you end up that a program has already been approved, but you have changes in equitable services, please reach out to us on that. And that is a little bit of a different process, and we can walk you through that individually. So we just wanted to highlight that. The other thing I'd like to highlight is called AFWA, AFUA. That is only for districts and charters who are small rural student achievement grant eligible, SRSA 5B eligible. If you are using transferability, please mark AFWA as no in the submit assurance section. There's been some confusion on that yet. And again, that's only for LEAs that are SRSA eligible. If you're using transferability or using your funds for regular approvable things under each program, please mark that no. Bottom line is, if you think you need to mark AFWA yes, give us a call so we can walk you through that, because 99.9% of the time, you're really not using AFWA, you're just using transferability or using your funds for its intended purposes. So those couple of things are things that have come through for us, and so appreciate you giving us the time, Lisa, to highlight those.
Absolutely. You know, this is sometimes something that's really difficult to understand, especially if you're newer, but even if you're experienced, it's one of those nuanced things that you only deal with once in a while and you're trying to remember how it all works. So again, the messaging here is that's why we're here. Give a call to these staff, and when you get to those portions of any of these applications, if you're not sure about how that works and what you may or may not need to submit or fill out. So yeah, thanks you guys for sharing that. And we're going to talk a little bit more about obligation here in a couple slides. But now let's just move on to kind of where we're at in those GRA reimbursements. I'm going to turn it over to the federal programs team. I believe that we have Emily on who wants to share a little bit about those, some of her ARP funds and some reallocations. So Emily, are you on?
Yes, I am. Thanks, Lisa. Good morning, everyone. Just an update. So the ARPHCY funds, they are a 3-year grant with the American Rescue Funds, specifically for homeless children and youth. We are coming to the last year of the 3-year grant, and we have some USED has stipulated that some specific criteria that's unique to this grant, in which that if an LEA qualified for $5,000 or less, they needed to be put in a consortia. So here we are, and it is nearing to the end. We have a couple of obligation dates for this grant. September 30th is the obligation deadline, and then drawdown deadline is January 18th. At this point, we still have some consortia that have not identified a fiscal lead. There has been some transitions with that, and or they do not have a signed MOU with all the LEAs in their consortia. So at this point, we are sending a letter out to those consortium LEAs that fall in this category, and we will be letting them know that we will be reallocating their funds to other LEAs who have identified needs. If you guys have any questions, please let me know. Thanks, Lisa.
Yeah, absolutely. And then from on the other side of federal programs team, I believe it's Michelle Pereira that might be sending out letters with, or Aaron Kennedy, I'm not sure who, but you're going to get some notifications of fund balances and expiring funds. And on the IDEA side, we're also going to start sending those out. We just did one for our our restraint and seclusion reminders, and we're going to start sending out those LEA balances for the other IDEA grants and things to make sure you guys don't lose sight of those. Sometimes the little nuanced grants, I always joke they're small potatoes, and so they may only get drawn down once or twice a year, these little tiny guys, but it's that time of year, closeout is coming, and I know you guys are going to get in there and do that, so just don't lose sight of that. And then next up, we're going to talk a little bit about Esser. So we're going to turn it over hopefully to Lisa English. Are you on the line to talk about some Esser updates? Maybe. Okay. Does Aaron Kennedy want to talk anything about Esser? I can talk a little bit about it as maybe one of them are trying to chime in. On the Esser updates, and this kind of goes with anything for any of your applications, but especially aligning to Essers, that those expenditures that you're turning in do really need to align with your Esser plan. And that's something that we had to be a little bit more stringent on. Last minute purchases, I understand can happen, but it still needs to meet that plan that you have identified and outlined. And then monitoring and reporting is going to be coming, so look for more updates to come through there. They'll be in touch with you guys as they may require some additional expenditure reports and or how that's going to look. And there'll be some trainings on some of that monitoring coming up. So next, and I do see a message from Aaron in the chat, no updates on the reporting yet, but hopefully early August or September. Now, on restraint and seclusion, that was another one of our little grants, our little mini grants that we gave out to help support that House bill that talked about some of the requirements in training to put in place. But districts also needed to, or LEAs needed each adopt a board policy. There had been a sample one sent out to use as a framework. But we're wondering if you guys feel like you were able to get that accomplished. If you haven't, please reach out to the state. We want to help you guys get that in place. Do you still have mini grant funds available? These little small potatoes, please draw them down. And we're not reallocating those to another district at this point in time because those were expiring based on a timeline of funding that was ending. I just saw that Lisa chimed in. Lisa, did you want to come off mute and see if was there something else you wanted to share on Esser? Okay. All right. Oh, yes, she does want to share. You should be able to.
Possible for someone to unmute her phone?
I can look. I don't see an option for that. I don't have security on that. They should all be able to. Yes, we hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hello. Okay, hi. Sorry, technical difficulties. Okay, so
Right.
just real quick, we know we're pushing to have everyone spend their Esser funds in these last couple months, but just remember, I think Lisa did brush over this, you know, those expenses do need to align to those Esser plans. They're not, you know, free for all. Let's see what we can spend them on. So please make sure that you are still aligning to those Esser plans as we come down to those last months. I think Lisa did cover those, but really important. And then If you have not been monitored these last 2 years for Esser, please know that they are coming up. You're coming up this last year for monitoring. We will be sending out that information in this next month. You will be either monitored in the fall or the spring, which means either October or January. We'll be getting that information out as soon as we can. So watch for that coming, and then monitoring or reporting will be coming out shortly as well for the next year. So just watch for those announcements to come out. So sorry, but thank you. Thanks for that.
Hey, no problem, Lisa. And more to come always from us. Sometimes we get notified at the 19th hour that the feds want some new report. So hopefully that's not the case. But if something changes, we'll notify you guys as soon as we can on the needs of that. But just be prepared for that. So back to my little restraint and seclusion grant. If you did get one of those mini grants, last thing on that is that we're going to send a survey out to ask if you thought that the funds were helpful and what you may have used those for, the type of training, that kind of thing. So those will likely be sent out to either a business manager or special ed director. More mini grants coming. Our announcement here for special education learning disability, special learning disability, SLD. We're going to have some allocations coming out here in the next week or so. It's going to be based on the size of your actual special ed population. And this is really going to be used to help support getting some extra duty hours to get paid to attend, substitute costs, travel costs if it's applicable, to get to some of these regional trainings that we're doing in person. It's also going to be in that little special ed mini grants fund 265 so that you don't mix those expenditures in with the flow through formula funds, which you guys report back in that application. So that's why we're using Fund 265. It's because we use our state set-asides money to pay those for professional development uses. So look for that. It's coming soon. Speaking of trainings, we have just to save the date for you. We will have the ESEA IDEA Fall Workshop Conference. The name will come out soon. Just to save the dates, right? It's going to be at the Nampa Civic Center, and registration is going to come out soon. It will get blasted out to all of you. As far as federal programs monitoring that they were just kind of alluding to, there's going to be a training, it sounds like, coming up in September that you might get pulled to as well. So look for more information on that coming soon. But these are just kind of save the dates, keep it in the back burner. Some other training opportunities. Now, this is programmatic, and I tried to put the audience in here, but these are some trainings that we're putting on. That's what those funds are going to go towards from that mini grant. The audience is really special educators, service providers, school psychs, other special education administrators. So make sure that you register for that, and I've got links here to that. And that's really to help you guys understand those new proposed criteria and how that works with the SLD evaluation and eligibility processes. Totally out of my realm. But we have very competent people here and through our SESTA group that are going to be putting those on. The next one to keep on your radar, in case you lost track of this, just another way to get to you guys as the audience, similar audience, to make sure you register for those. So that you can learn about all the essential components of the IEP. And our last little plug for upcoming trainings from special ed anyway are our data drill downs. And meaningful data is so important. We're going to be talking a lot more about that in this next year at lots of different webinars across our teams here at the Department of Ed, and how you can use that to make better data-driven decision making, and how you invest in your professional development, curriculum, all kinds of things, right? So again, this is the special ed directors and support staff. Here's your way to do it. There is for registration, there is a deadline. I want to remind you that they have things all over the state, different places you can go for the trainings, but it is an individual registration. So don't think that if you do it once that you're going to register the whole team. I'm not going to dwell on that one too long. I want to get into some content here about obligation of funds. So we just talked to you guys about, hey, go draw down those monies, or we're reallocating and you might get a bump in your grant or something like that. But let's talk about the obligation, because one of the things that has come through to me recently was on those mini grants, and the end date on it was June 30th. So let's try and make sure we understand when the actual performance date has ended and some of how obligation can be a different date. So you got to understand the different activities that are driving how and when you can say it met the obligation date. So I've got the CFRs here for you from Edgar that help us understand different types versus an employee or a contractor, and how we count the different types of activities to a different type of yes or no answer for that. This is the best grid I can come up with for you that talks kind of about when an obligation is considered. So one of the ones on my little restraints inclusion grant that ended June 30th was, well, what if we paid the trainer, the contractor, to do the training? We, the service and the deal has been made, a binding agreement. This falls under number C, or letter C here. They are bound by this contractual agreement they're obligated to come and give us this service, but they're going to come give us the service maybe on July 15th. The grant ended on the 30th of June, but we were in contract with them and committed to the service. That still meets the obligation period, and that is totally fine. Now, if you wanted to pay your folks to attend that are your employees on July 15th, that would not meet the obligation period because they are an employee, and that is tied to when the service or the activity has actually been performed. So that one's kind of tricky, but this hopefully will help you understand. Travel is another one that gets when can I say it was obligated for travel? Well, it's actually based on when the actual travel is taken. So that one trips people up. We just want to remind you of these things as you guys are getting ready to close these grants out. So if you have questions on a specific scenario, please send those our way. We want to help you use those funds, whether they're an ARP fund expiring, title funds, IDEA funds, these little mini grants. There's a performance measurement with all of them, but the premise of these dollars is we want you to spend it. We gave them to you for a very specific activity. We know you need them. So if you have questions, please let us know. All right, let's get back into some budgeting talks here. I had all those memes about budgeting, but wait, there's more. Let's talk about budgeting, okay? Because we are all deep in it. We just submitted them to our boards a month ago. We got them finalized. But now the reality of carryover and these new state school fund discretionary dollars that they're giving you that you're going to actually accrue back, all these different things are going to kind of shift some of the final budgets, right? So you have your appropriated budget, but you're also probably going to need to have a working budget. You're going to need to have a reality budget, as I call it. So yeah, that's what we budgeted, but here's what our true carryovers and whatnot now available to us by different various funding streams are. And we're going to talk about why is there so much emphasis on that? Really, it's these two main components of the Uniform Grant Guidance, and that's that subpart E cost principles, and then getting into what the full measure of financial management, which really mentions the word budget a lot. Now, yes, this is joking, but I know we all have people that are like, well, I didn't have a budget, so I wasn't sure. Well, we want to be sure. So we're going to start with the first part of 2 CFR 200-302A. And this is talking about how the states have to expend and account for. But in addition, our other non-federal agencies, including you guys as our sub-awardees, right? You guys all have to adhere to this as well, including records, all the different compliance behind all of that, making sure that it's sufficient and that you have the time and preparation of reports available to you, that you can trace these funds to a level of expenditures that are adequate to be able to report against them and to show transparently that they are following the federal statutes, the regulations, the conditions of each award, the premise behind them, to make sure that it's very transparent to both your board, to your program directors, And that's why we put so much emphasis on that, and why even CFSGA got a little bit of a redesign this year to make sure that you're capturing carryover, right? Because you really truly have that new full amount available to you. And so we've got to make sure we're transparent with all those making the decisions, that we don't just have the new grant award, we have X amount from last year. And then to being able to articulate if it was carryover or if you guys just put it all together, knowing that it's first in, first out. Obviously, the older carryover will get used first. And the GRA helps with that when you guys do your drawdown, it takes from the oldest money. Okay, let's get into section B1 and 2. This is budgeting 101 right here, right? We have to have the identification. It has to be in its accounts in the right, segregation so that we can identify it of all the federal awards received and expended, right? And we have to be able to show accurate, current, complete disclosure of all those financial records, okay? It's kind of a pain, I know, but that, we have that framework in our iFarms accounts that says what we're supposed to be using for the most part for those identifications. So you guys need to follow that. I know sometimes we kick something back and say, I think you have this in the wrong fund. And that's not us being evil. That's us, saying, hey, there's an actual framework for this and you have the wrong identifier on there. And sometimes you guys didn't realize that. And hopefully we saved you a finding or we saved you a mistake and maybe even 20 journal entries later. So that's why we have to review those as well when you guys do the expenditure reports. But we also need to be glancing at your budgets, right? What you asked for in these applications needs to align with what you're asking for. That's part of that complete disclosure. Now, I know I'm mixing all kinds of genres here with my memes, but budgeting for you guys has to really record and identify adequately, like everything, including that carryover, right? We need to make sure that we have that. We're showing unobligated balances. How can you show that if you don't have a budget, right? You can show your expenditures all day, but if your budget isn't accurate, then your unobligateds or your uncommitteds are not accurate. So that's why we have to make sure that we are demonstrating that to all the key players here that are making those decisions, that are maybe even trying to budget FTE swaps and changes and most efficiencies. I know budgeting is hard right now. Money is tight. Many of you guys had failed levies. Just the switch back to from enrollment back to attendance has been very difficult. We know that. We are tracking that. You guys see us trying to address that in those chronic absenteeisms. But again, all the webinars and the resources we're putting out, but you guys are living it, right? And when you're the business manager on the other end and you're trying to tell the program director, I don't have that much money for you, they might think they had way more than they did. You got to transparently show them, yeah, you thought you were going to have 20,000 in carryover, but after all that stuff came in as an accrual, you only have 5. So we can't afford that extra FTE or whatever it might be. So that's again, all of that has to be transparent. Share the knowledge between each other, and a working budget will do that. Okay. So it also helps keep track if you need to ask for an additional appropriation, because you need to compare it to your adopted budget, right? Here's what I asked my board for. Here's what I'm appropriated for. You probably have a little wiggle or slush room. But if you have huge carryovers, and you also, maybe get some other new grant you didn't know about that wasn't part of that appropriated budget, you're going to have to go back to your board. So use that as another tracking mechanism to compare to so that you're not caught off guard at the year end. All right. Why are we all so calm and composed and how do we know that we're composed and we're not stressed out, right? Well, we have strong controls of some sort, right? And that's part of 2 CFR 200-312 B4, my favorite. We have to have internal controls, right? We have to have effective control over it. And part of that to safeguard the assets and safeguard everything that's used for the purpose of intention. That's what this is talking about. That it's saying we have to make sure that we are the guardians and we are making sure it's used as intended. So truly, let's make sure that everything is dialed in so that everybody has transparent access to it and understands what's happening. This one's actually one of my favorite pictures. I don't want to be an accountant anymore. Go running, right? Because sometimes when you compare to the budget for each award, it isn't what you thought, and it is a little scary. But we really have to have that comparison. And this is the findings listing that I give on a lot of folks when we do their reviews, their fiscal monitoring, is that this is what I'm talking about, this CFR, when we go back to a working budget. It really is identified to meet the requirements and be able to be transparent, and the allowability of costs and everything else under the sun that goes back and points back to subpart E. All of this means I need to have a true comparison of my expense against my budget. And my budget, if it's garbage, doesn't give me the proper comparison. So we need true, good, real, meaningful, adjusted working budgets. Okay, so I know that's a pain. And when you guys are closing out and you're doing your accruals and you have to re-roll your fund balances 18 times till you get to the real amount. But eventually you got to have the right amount, and it should tie out to what you've reported in our applications with the GRA. The money is available to you. Your board members don't have access to the GRA. They don't know how much carryover you've got in there. So that's you guys being transparent through your ledgers, through the budgets. So that was my last favorite meme. All right. Now let's go back to subpart E, okay? Because we're coming full circle. This is not all of subpart E, but this is the piece I have cherry picked for you. The required certifications, you know, when you guys go in and you certify to the best of your knowledge and all those things when you do your GRA requests. But we're asking you to assure that those expenditures are proper and that they're meeting the conditions of the award and the approved project budget. That's why we ask for those in our system. We don't have that availability in the GRA, so we have those other applications that shows the budget. When those claims come in, we look at your budget on this page in those applications and say, well, this was the plan, but this is what they're asking for. And we need to make sure that we've given permission and or that we've made sure that aligned with the plan, right? And the intent of the award. So that's where we may have to kick something back and say, hey, this isn't matching. Was this really the intention? And if so, do we need to do a budget revision? Does it still meet the intent? And so work with us on that. But that's really the reasoning behind some of those getting kicked back, okay? Now, the other piece I want to talk about too with the budgets that's so important, I mentioned our preliminary application. So this goes to what is called the eligibility standard and the CFR here at the bottom. You're not eligible to receive your IDEA funds, another reason we have to have that budget, unless you prove to me that you're going to be eligible for it because you're meeting maintenance of effort. So maintenance of effort on special ed side, again, you got to show through very specific accounts, through iFarms and whatnot, through your financials that we do check to show that you've still got the skin in the game. You are already doing it out of your own state and local dollars, right? Before you're going to tap in to the federal dollars. So this gets back to the whole supplanting circle, right? Make sure that you're still spending out of your own state and local dollars before you're going to be eligible to take that grant, okay? Now, I wanted to switch gears slightly into the conversation of blending and braiding federal funds, because this comes up a lot. People question this. Let's talk about layering and blending funds. So what does that mean? It's just a process where we're using different funding streams to be able to support the whole activity and project or initiative, okay? Sometimes things aren't funded as well as we'd like. Think about IDEA. I think about how the federal grants don't even usually cover 20% of your actual expenditures to run a program. So you guys actually blend and braid in the special ed realm if you're doing Medicaid, right? Medicaid is offsetting some of your costs, and you have to spend it and offset those what would have been a general fund cost before you go tapping into the IDEA funds. So you are blending and braiding right there between general funds, between Medicaid reimbursements, and between IDEA. That's blending and braiding. It's also got to be tracked and in the right funds, be necessary, reasonable, and all of that stuff, and tracked in individual funding sources. So that's that segregation in those different accounts, no mingling, commingling of funds, right? And so if these things are all coming together, you're going to track your revenue still separately, time and effort. I have PARs here. That's those personnel activity reports that you might have to show that, yep, this is still the premise of this person is a special ed person, but I'm using this fund, and this fund to fund their activity. And so as long as you can show that and you're not duplicating the funding, you're not like double dipping for the same one expense, then it's usually okay. However, we're going to talk about how that looks like with title funding in just a sec. Now, I have another example here to talk about preschool funding and early childhood funding, right? Because we don't get state money for that at this time. So we know that sometimes you guys all have, different varying populations of children that might come into your area that you may have to serve for special education. And so many of the larger districts have preschool programs of some sort to meet the least restrictive environment component of special ed for those 3 to 5-year-olds, and to make sure that they still offer FAPE to them. Okay, so if we have this, we might be able to supplement that activity possibly with some title funds. And we've seen a couple of these come in over time. Again, we have to be able to outline very key components prior to saying yes, and you've got to do your diligence to track it, okay? So here is a visual for y'all that came from our Early Childhood Technical Assistance Center. And this visual shows in the darker blue sections, it talks about the U.S. Department of Ed gives us both IDEA and title, and the dotted lines show that those are possible funders to fund a preschool. You could also possibly ask for some funding at a discounted rate, things like that. We don't have this teal colored state pre-K funds, but we do have regular state general funds that you guys get. So there's different pieces and ways and mechanisms that you could put together a preschool to help offer that IDEA component if you have those 3 to 5-year-olds that are identified and that you have to have that service for. So this is just a visual example to keep in mind. Oh yeah, I'd be blending and braiding to make that happen. You're probably already doing it in some capacity if you have that child that you have to serve, okay? Now, back to supplement, not supplant. Let's talk about what that means in terms of on the ESEA side, because you guys might say, well, wait a second, I got to still meet my maintenance of effort there too. And that's true. You have to have that consistent base of the state and local funding year to year so that it doesn't look like you're supplanting, right? You can't take it and say, I don't want to use general funds, I'm going to spend it on my federal Title I anymore. That's supplanting. You can't do that. But does it feel like that backwards if I was trying to use title funds to help support a special ed? This is where we want to make sure you understand just how does supplement, not supplant, work with title. Title is really confusing to some folks because there's these other components of comparability where you're looking at the school as a whole to make sure that a non-Title I school has similar costs on their books, and you're not just using title funds to fund a Title I school, right? There's all these different layers, but it all leads back to supplement, not supplant, right? You have to have that baseline of your state and local general funds to make sure that it doesn't look like or that it is not a supplement, not supplant. But I'm talking in my previous examples about blending and braiding different federal funds, federal to federal. So we're going to continue this thought process because some of you are like, I don't have enough money now for this person, but I did have a little bit of title left, but but now I don't have enough for my full-time preschool person or whatever it might be. So here's our question. Can I move FTE out of IDEA over to title? And the answer is yes, right? What? This blew my mind from some is what someone told me. Yes, as long as you're still meeting state and local maintenance of effort for IDEA, and if you're still meeting your local efforts on the other side as well. So if you have this scenario that might need to happen, please reach out to your Title I coordinators and or to me. Make sure that you're identifying in your plan and your budget very clearly and transparently to us that you are only funding at 0.15 out of title to meet the full 1 FTE and the other 0.85 is over in IDEA. Just let us know so we can help you and make sure it's on our radar as well to help you meet the other components of time and effort and everything else under the sun, okay? So, but the answer is yes, you can. So breathe a little and say, wow, oh, okay, that's something I could maybe use. Okay, next, let's talk a little bit about local education news and things that are happening. What are you guys thinking about right now? I know that I'm hearing about budgetary shortfalls. I'm talking about things with people like that scenario we just talked about, how we can still get that full FTE put together because we are piecemealing it out and split funding it now. Maybe things are going on in your libraries. What about open enrollment? What's that doing to you or for you? Or how is that helping you if maybe you're a charter or how is your enrollment looking this year? Did you guys fill up? Do you have wait lists? The reason I'm asking some of these today of you, what are you following? What's meaningful to you? I don't have a poll for this, but if you want to put something in the chat, come off mute. How are you guys thinking about these, about even the open primaries thing that might change who gets elected? And that might change who's in the legislature and what types of bills will get launched or adopted. So if any of these things are things you want us to address or to actually have full discussions specifically about, let us know. I want to talk some of the federal things out there because this is going to affect everybody. So we have a lot going on the federal side right now. So the U.S. House of Representatives has met. Their Committee on Appropriations had released the bill, and they have actually now adopted it. For the Labor, Health, and Human Services, education is in there. This is that LHHS. Some of the highlights in here was that they were trying to prioritize some funding for early childhood education. And then some of the other components for the disabled, other programs around IDEA for students with disabilities. They talked about more increased funding in technical ed. So we'll be on, that's definitely going to be on our radar once it gets kind of to the Senate and getting close to be adopted. We're going to watch those appropriations for you. But there's also a lot of buzz about increasing funding for charter schools again to help support, those other school options. Now, that can be great for a charter, and that can just make some of the other LEAs think, that could affect my enrollment then if the charter population grows, things like that. So those will be definitely items of discussion we'll be watching and trying to update you guys on as we see it come through. Now, the appropriation levels for this that came through are a little bit below overall the fiscal year 24. So just slightly. That doesn't mean necessarily our funding streams. I have a link that is in here about Biden's original budget request, but they did actually approve in committee on July 10th, the proposed piece that was in the House. So now it's going to go on to the next level. So it's going to keep going through, and then we're going to see some duking it out. But what I want to bring to your attention are some of the funding streams that could be affected. And I mean, last year they said they were going to get rid of Title I altogether, and that didn't happen. Right now they're saying they want to take Title I down 25%. They want to possibly get rid of teacher quality. For Title II, they want to make some changes for IDEA as an increase. If that went up by 30 million, I would be shocked, but maybe it will. Impact aid, charter stuff, all those different pieces of childcare development block grants and things that might help fund some blending and braiding of those funding streams for those preschool activities. But we don't think it's going to actually pass through Congress before the elections. So there's going to be a lot of buzz in the news. We'll be following it. We'll let you know if we think any of it's legit, so that it'll be on your radar. But truly, it's probably going to be like last year where we had 4 or 6 or however many continuing resolutions later to keep funding going. And really, what's going to happen to your funding streams is really going to depend on who's in the White House. Okay, that's the end of that. All right, so we'll keep you updated. Title IX, we're one of the 15 states still where the rules on hold, and there's been some attempts to undo that have failed. So far, status quo, we could certify that you guys are still meeting the terms of Title IX when we did our certifications on our applications because we are still running under the premise of the old rule. So you're all good there. We'll let you know how that plays out. And obviously the department here will let you know what happens in the end. On the what's on your radar as we're getting close to wrap up time, We don't have the new data acquisition calendar out. What I would really just like to put through to you guys is what kind of calendar of accountability do you have internally? This is part of your internal processes and procedures and controls to make sure you're not missing reports that are due, or making sure you get all those policies adopted and get them on your board agendas. So when the new data acquisition calendar does actually get sent out and posted, I would encourage everybody to align your own dates and processes and meetings around those to make sure that you have somebody lined up to do each of the things that you need to in a timely manner. Now, as we're wrapping up with our last couple minutes for May, these are all repeat slides. I'm including them in here for a good reason. We are going to do a uniform grant guidance training at the ESEA IDEA conference in the fall. And then we had heard from you guys, you would love a one-pager. So that's that resource we're going to be working on. Again, just super fast, making sure you guys understand credible as evidence and how to articulate that to your staff, the whistleblower protections, changes to indirect cost rate, cybersecurity, and that you should have that as an internal control, something that we may even look for in our listing of monitoring stuff. So to make sure you guys have some sort of policy on that and internal control, and did it affect you to be bumped up to the $1 million threshold? Maybe you won't actually have to have a single audit. Equipment threshold changes and what you may want to adopt on your side, residual inventories and those unused supplies and how you can take those kind of back into the general scope of things, equipment disposition, all these things we'll be putting on our inventory procedures, all of this conflict of interest, adding a board member. That's a policy when you guys got to adopt. So making sure that that's on your radar, we'll keep trying to keep all of that up there for you. But please send your ideas to us, contact us. We want to make sure we're helpful, even if we just remind you of something you already knew. Look how many people are here to support you, y'all. So make sure you're calling us. We want to make sure you feel supported. I want to pause, make sure there's no other questions that somebody has in the chat. I've been watching it and want to see if anybody has anything. Anybody have any other messaging they want to give us before I hear construction in the background resuming? We appreciate you guys. I want to make sure that you know that everything you guys do, we don't see all of it, but we see the tail end of it. So we want to know that we want you to all know how much we appreciate all your efforts and that you work with us and know we're here to support you at every stage of the game. So with that being said, quiet, nothing out there. I want to go ahead and say goodbye to everybody, and we'll close today's Communities of Practice, and we will see you guys next month for more fun. Have a great day, guys.